Welcome to Kitchen Sink Dharma, and today's talk is about practicing mindfulness throughout the day. And it was inspired by something that Thich Nhat Hanh wrote, which is, if you're mindful, you have everything. And it comes from his book, The Sun, My Heart. If you're mindful, you have everything. Because in the moments when we're fully present to life, with our heart open and we're relaxed and we're mindful, then there's nothing missing. We've got absolutely everything. Now, I think it's a mistake to think of mindfulness as something that's only reserved for sitting meditation. We're not going to get very far if we just see it solely as a formal practice, something that we have to fit in alongside all of the other tasks on our to-do list. So the aim is to live our whole lives more mindfully, and not just when we sit on a cushion. And living our lives more mindfully means living more fully. So if we can broaden our concept of practice so that it's not just about finding time to sit once a day, it can actually change everything. So can you meditate while you're peeling carrots, for example, or are you more likely to be leaning forward and hoping the future is going to give you something different, hoping it's going to make up for what's missing now? Because you can daydream about a better future while you're doing something mundane like peeling the carrots. Or you can just simply breathe in and out and peel them with love. And I often hear people say that they can't meditate because of the way that their mind is, or they don't have time to meditate. Saying I can't meditate or I don't have time to meditate is really based on a very narrow view of what meditation actually is. And also maybe a view that everything has to be just right before you can call it meditation. There's so many different ways to meditate throughout the day, and absolutely anything can be used as an anchor for your meditation. Any object, any thought, any feeling, any question. Any object that you meditate on is going to bring you some clarity, some sharpness of mind, and some peace. You can rest your attention on the breath, or a sensation in the body, or a mantra, or visualization. Or you can cultivate kindness or compassion or joy or simplicity. Or you can notice pleasant and unpleasant feelings. You can just observe the weather of the heart and mind. You might meditate on the space between thoughts, or the sights and the sounds and the smells around you. You can even just think about reasons to be grateful for your life. Or you can try not thinking for 30 seconds and notice what happens. I could go on. The point is, mindfulness can be very creative. It can be very playful. It doesn't have to be dour. And it doesn't help to look too high, because the big prize isn't up there amongst the clouds. It's right down here on earth. Sometimes we distract ourselves because we're feeling wretched or bad, and we think there's something wrong with us, something faulty. So if at any point today you're feeling miserable, one option is just to give yourself permission to feel miserable. Whatever else you happen to be feeling, it's allowed. It's an opportunity to practice compassion. So if we're feeling despondent, then meeting that despondency with mindfulness and compassion, it might not instantly transform it into something that feels good. It might still feel quite bumpy. But we're just not aiming to feel good all the time. What we're doing is we're building our capacity to be strong and wise and kind, and that's not the same thing at all. So meeting our suffering with mindfulness, with compassion, over and over again, is going to do this. It's going to build this. It's going to build our capacity to be strong and wise and kind. And with those three things, you've got everything you need. And I want to talk for a moment about desire as well, because we're often pulled away from the present moment by desire. And desire shapes a lot of our waking hours. And we have big desires and small desires. There are desires that are so subtle that we don't even notice them. And everything we desire can be traced back to deeper desires. And we can already have what we most deeply desire, because we can already have peace and contentment and love and belonging and meaning and worth right here and right now in this moment. As the teacher Jack Cornfield said, the abundant heart is already whole. And if you actually really take that in, it can be quite disturbing. What am I? Who am I if I'm not constantly wanting, if I'm not constantly desiring? What does that leave me? Because the truth is, if you're mindful, you have everything. When you think about it, that's quite a radical statement. It's quite at odds with the way that we're taught to relate to the world. We have everything. We're already complete. But we don't recognize that. We don't always recognize our riches. The mind doesn't actually believe that we're whole. It worries that we're not going to get what we want, or we're going to lose what we've got, or get more of what we don't want. And that worry isn't who we are. But still we act as if it is, and we weave it into our identity, and we hold on to it as if our life depended on it. I wish somebody had told me about this when I was younger, because I may not have believed them straight away. Probably would have said something like, yeah, it's okay for you to say that, but you don't have my life. But I can see it now. I can see it. In my early life, I just felt detached from wholeness most of the time. I was lost in illusions and fantasies and completely unaware of what was already mine. Just doubting everything. And I don't doubt everything anymore. I still forget sometimes. But at some level I know that when I'm receptive to what life is offering me, there's absolutely nothing missing. I want to read out a very short poem for you. And it's called Enough, and it's by David White. And it goes, enough. These few words are enough. If not these words, this breath. And if not this breath, this sitting here. This opening to the life we have refused again and again. Until now. Until now. So this sense of enough, it can be revealed to us through the practice of mindfulness. There's all sorts of ways to do it as well. All sorts of ways to practice mindfulness. You could actually see it as having two main types, two modes of mindfulness. There's mindfulness that's one-pointed, and there's mindfulness that's wide open, like the sky. So when we practice one-pointed mindfulness, it means fixing the mind to an object and staying there. It's a very narrow thing. The object is going to shift and change, but we stay with it. And this is something that we mostly do in formal practice, whether we're sitting or walking. And it's a very powerful practice. It sharpens the mind. But of course, there's also the wide open type of mindfulness. And that's one that we can practice throughout the day, anytime. You could call it spatial mindfulness, if you like. And by that I mean creating a space in which things arise and pass. And that takes a bit of practice, but it's something we can all master. So we can start off with this very narrow one-pointed mindfulness, maybe noticing the sensations that accompany breathing, something like that. Then we can open it up, wide open. We can bring in the wider sensations of the body. Not instead of, but as well as the sensations of breathing. And then we can bring in everything else, all of the other senses, the sounds, the sight, and we just simply keep welcoming everything into our awareness and relishing it, relishing the richness of it. And what we're practicing here is just being really interested in our experience. And not our judgment about our experience, not the commentary, not the narrative, but the actual experience itself. This sense of sufficiency, of wholeness, if you like, is sustained throughout this practice. It's sustained by our willingness to abandon the apparent safety of our obsessions and our tendency to judge and strategize and fixate. Abandoning all of that for the slightly less predictable and more chaotic world of direct experience. Opening up the heart. Knowing that we're part of everything and we can't escape the world and we don't need to escape the world. Recognizing our belonging in the world begins with seeing clearly into our own experience. And of course we open up to the wider world, and this is also about becoming very familiar with our inner world, experiencing the feelings and the energies in the body, and experiencing the quiet moments, the tiny spaces that exist in between the thoughts. So the Buddha talked about a dharma that's profound, peaceful, simple, luminous and unconditioned. But he didn't say it was easy, because what we're doing is we're unraveling patterns that go back for years, decades even, patterns of stress and discontent. Because the mind is a very sophisticated problem solver. And if there's not a real problem, it's often going to invent one. And when there's nothing going on, we often think our way into agitation. We think about our feelings, and that triggers more feelings. And the mind tries to protect us with all this constant thinking, and we put up walls to protect ourselves, and the signals get jammed. And the thinking mind overshadows the more intuitive parts of us with ideas about how things should be. And there's all sorts of reasons why we distract ourselves, but it leaves us feeling small and separate, insufficient. And that's the price we pay. But underneath all of the noise and the worries and the desires is something much calmer. There's a beautiful essential quality, there's a radiant quality, a radiant awareness, capacity for intimacy. And that's what the Satipatthana Sutta is referring to when it talks about an unsurpassed heart and mind, a liberated heart and mind. This is when the body and the mind come together. And it's huge and it's inexhaustible. The poet Hafiz wrote, "I wish I could show you, when you are lonely or in darkness, the astonishing light of your own being. I wish I could show you when you're lonely or in darkness, the astonishing light of your own being." This is what we're awakening to. It's a very natural process, and it doesn't require perfect conditions. It doesn't require us to be saints. It only requires a willingness to practice, to cultivate, and to open up to the possibility. So that's this week's episode of Kitchen Sink Dharma, and thanks for joining me. See you again soon.